Well, it's time for another MalTravAle's podcast.
Oh.
We're flying along. This is episode 32. Now, feels numbers are getting higher and higher every week as they would. Right, I'll just fade out the ukulele music.
Thank you.
And good evening.
That was,
Evening,
that was
Nicholas.
a nice,
Evening, Bruce.
that was a nice fade.
Yes, well, yeah. Fortunately, I've given up using my little sound box thing. It's just stick it in there. You can't fade on PowerPoint. Actually, what do you have to look at?
Right.
But how are you, Jed? Are we all right? I know you met up Friday night in York with my brother-in-law.
We did.
Who's just returned back to Staffordshire.
We were a bit baffled by the protocols of the Sam Smith's pub, wasn't he, Nick?
Yeah.
It's a novelty to talk about. Yeah.
Good.
Even when he pulled his phone out of his top pocket, Bruce was going, put it away, you can't tell us in here. Fortunately, it was quite a young lass behind the bar, and she didn't really have the nonce to say, no, you can't have this out. And she sort of played along with us, really.
I mean, we said before, there isn't, it's an absolute Sam Smith's desert round here. I wouldn't even know. I would think Stockport is probably where the nearest Sam Smith's is, and there's just nothing.
Oh, well, Joe reckoned he had Sam Smith's beer before, and then he opted for a pint of cider. So,
right. yeah. Well, it's like I was saying, it's certainly got some of that Tadcaster snatch, like the Burton snatch on that when you first go back to an old brewery.
I had a pint of Old Brewery. It was a bit weird. I don't know whether my taste bud is still a bit like you, Bruce, when you had your COVID. Because each pint of beer I've had this weekend, I've had it with an expected taste, and it didn't taste anything like I expected. So whether the beer has been different or what, I don't know. But I think it must be my taste, really.
Yeah, so just catch up, because I think that's since the last podcast, wasn't it? You unfortunately went down with the dreaded COVID, so strike two. So Bruce had it quite a while. Christmas time you had it, Bruce, wasn't it? Just
last year.
Yeah, and Nick managed to keep out of it, but you went down for a couple of days with it.
Yeah, well, I wasn't poorly with it, but I had it, so I had to isolate. So, yeah, but it's rife around here. I think this is the whole thing with the government. They're letting people get on with it now. I think statistics is there's more people dying of flu now than dying of COVID. So it's a case of catch it and get on with it.
And it looks like we've got some beer in the glasses, gentlemen. Or certainly Nick has. Nick, are you on the little slurp tonight?
Oh yes, I'm actually drinking some of my Christmas beer up. So I'm on the Black Sheep Ale, which is pertinent for what our discussion is tonight. So a pint of Black Sheep Ale in a Bass glass.
Okay. Bruce, are you partaking this evening?
No, because I was out with Nick and Joe Friday night. I was up at 6:30 yesterday morning to go to Great 8, and then there was a pint in Stokes on the way back. That's a beer desert, Stokes. And then I went out last night at 15, and had about 4 or 5 last night. So I've just got dandelion and burdock on the go now. I'm afraid.
I'll find about it. Well, I'm just for you, pair. The Thornbridge box came. Was it last week, and if we mentioned that they were doing a collab with Thornbridge and Brew York. Yeah. So I think it's Brew York. Is it their 10th? No, is it 6th birthdays are coming up? I know they've got.
There's a big opening up at the brewery.
That's it. Yeah. We mentioned a couple of episodes ago that they're actually going to phase out Big Eagle, or is it Big Eagle they do, or whatever Eagle it's called. And it's just going to become a seasonal rather than a regular. And so they said that they were going to do a Big Eagle Jaipur collab. So this is the Thorny Eagle, which is a modern West Coast IPA, 7.1%. So I'm gonna crack that. I've got about 2 cans in the box. I've not actually had any yet, so I'm gonna I'll let you know what it's whether I can taste whether it's Eagle or Jaipur.
Is that a 330 or a 500?
This is a 440.
All right, yeah.
So
midway.
It's looking quite Jaipur-y. It's got that that strange, slightly gold hint. It smells a bit Jaipur-y as well. Although again, the Eagles are probably a little bit similar, isn't it? You can certainly taste the 7%.
Taste the Eagles.
Taste the Eagles. So beery highlights then. So you obviously went to a Sam Smith's pub on Friday night. Did you manage anywhere else?
Well, I was starting the Spoons. One of Bruce's least favourite places, but it was all right in there. I got a nice pint of white rat in there. Used my voucher for £1.59. So nice start to the evening. Osset white rat.
And then you just went to Spoons and you went to Chinese, did you?
Phoenix afterwards, didn't we?
Oh, Phoenix, yeah. Was that big? That be busy, was it, on a Friday night?
We got a seat and it was quite lovely. Yes,
Just
COVID
central, that one. Yeah.
Yeah. There's not much social distancing in the Phoenix, is there?
No,
And,
no.
have you been out this weekend? Have you been out Saturday night? Did you have your normal little wander around Molten, or?
No, I went to Smith's Arms last night. So
right.
In Harrogate, chef and brewer, but they always have 3 decent beers on. So started on the Saltaire blonde, which was very nice. Then moved on to they had a Revolutions Porter, Revolutions at Castleford, and all their pump clips are quite distinctive because it looks like a little record. So they're not too easy to read when you stood sort of behind somebody, because you see the picture and there's no distinction between them. And then they just put what the actual beer is in the top corner there. But I knew it was a porter. Cracking beer to look at. That typical very dark ruby red colour. Interesting beer. Only needed a pint of it. And then finished off with a pint of Landlord. Now, once again, $4.45 in there. The good thing with the chef and brewer pubs is the 10% off for a camera. You've got your camera card, which brings the price down a little bit. But tell you what I did, bro. So I let my dad have a taste of it and say, right, if I gave you that to the pub and told you that it had won the champion beer of Britain 4 times, would you say it was head and shoulders above anything else? And he said, no, not really. It's not anything special. And well, you and Joe had pints of Landlord in Phoenix, didn't you? How did you find that?
I mean, it was pretty good actually. As Landlord goes, it's good you find it anywhere, but it's very rare you find it the way we remember it. I know we keep going like a stuck record, but it's true. We know it's a well-kept pint, but it's the beer that's changed. The pub still keep the beer well, but the actual beer's changed. They just refuse to admit it, don't they?
Yeah, but again, as I've always said, I mean, I would imagine the Phoenix, it pushes through a lot of bloody Landlord, doesn't it? Because a lot of people coming to York will try it.
Beer's top-notch beer in there all the time, yeah.
Yeah, and I guess, Nick, in the Smiths, people will try it, but they probably won't do. I mean, I bet they squeeze the barrel out a couple of weeks rather than 4 or 5 days.
I don't think so. And like you say, especially Landlord. I mean, if you walk into a pub, even though you've got 3 of the real ales on in there, inevitably the sort of the pub that the Smith's Arms is, because it's obviously quite an affluent area, so people don't mind paying $4.45.
People are drinking 7-8 pints of it, are they? They're having a meal mainly, aren't they? I mean, not a bit of drinking.
Yeah, just some passing trade as well. But no, it was just such a shame. I said to my dad, for what we used to remember it was a completely different taste to anything else. And it was because it had a character to it. It had a light floral character to it 20, 25 years ago. And yeah, it may be also because, there are so many other beers out there now that have got a different distinct flavour compared to your basic old bitter. But I would love to be able to just taste that taste again that we remember, sort of 25 years ago, sat in the boat.
The golden best in the boatmaker's arms. Oh,
yeah. Actually, I had a stand-up bit. I went out, I just had a quick walk out. It was a lovely night Friday. I'd been in Lancaster at Lancaster University, so I got back and Mrs. was going for a haircut. So I said, I'll wander in town. I called in the Boat and Horses, and they had it was a rucker. It was it's like a Six Nations beer, but that was a straight up bitter. And actually, it was all right. Actually, it was quite nice. But then obviously I got tempted by some of this new stuff. So I went into Mellard's first of all. And I think my untapped write-up was, this looks like dishwater but tastes like a hoppy fruit bowl. So this was a Vocation and a Verdant collab. It's all the thing, these collabs, isn't it? So I mean Vocation are from Edinburgh.
I don't know what collab. It looks more like colon. It looks like
and Verdant are from Cornwall. So this was their Fruit Bat Ninja. And it was definitely fruity. It was only about 4.something%. And as you see there, it was slightly more than the normal 360. It was $4.20 a pint. Do you know what though? It was all right. It wasn't bad actually. And I went on the Pentrick then at 360 a pint. They're badly drawn gun. And I didn't go into the.
I'm going to say there's an Uber one next door. That I would have been on that instead. I would have thought.
Yeah. So that was quite nice. And then I went off to the hot water cellar where I normally end up now. They don't do any cask in there, but they have 8 drafts on. I had quite nice Polly's, a new Polly's beer in there, Floret, which was quite a nice IPA. And I finished up on a Manchester Track 8.5% dipper. I didn't quite go for the tipper. They had a Cloudwater tipper at 10%, which I thought was maybe just a half pint too far. It's amazing how those bloody strong beers catch up a little bit. They do, they do. Okay, not much beer news this week. A couple of things that Bruce has shared with me, and I don't know if you guys picked this up. this was actually a couple of weeks ago now, but
Yeah.
Molten Brewery were obviously Yorkshire pudding beer fame. Were tweeting that they just managed to get got their plans submitted, in that they are building they're going to be able to put a bigger brewing kit. So I presume they're expanding slightly in the brewery. I don't know if there's any space nick around they can move into.
I was gonna say, I'm surprised you have to get permission to increase the size of your brewing kit.
I suppose you're taking the water and stuff, and it's the waste, isn't it, and stuff as well. So anyway,
yeah,
it says
water's got nothing to do with council. Water's down to which water company you're using.
Yeah, but I presume you're off. Whatever you're chucking away, they'll probably. And it looks like there's a grant there as well, because it's a grant application as well. So I'm guessing that'll be a.
They were at Stokes. It was at Farmers Market day in Stokes yesterday, and they had the stall there, so they were quite a way out with Molten yesterday.
Yeah. And then again, Bruce, you sent me a couple. So obviously it was St. Patrick's this week. You know what? I've not had a pint of Guinness all week actually. I had a pint of McDonald's yesterday. But I know, Bruce, you follow some of these Guinness kind of drinking folks, and the shit London Guinness at shit London Guinness had been looking around London for the best pints of Guinness, and there was actually quite a good write-up actually about some Guinness gurus about what you should look for, and the whole thing about splitting the harp and the letters and the normal thing. And again, as always, their main tips will look at the head. The head will tell you everything about the pint of Guinness, and if it's white and creamy with a dome, then it's on good form. And they came up with their top 5 pints of Guinness in London, not in any particular order: the Oud Shillelagh in Stoke Newington, the Coach and Horses in Covent Garden, the Guinea Grill in Mayfair, the Sheephaven Bay in Camden, and the 12 Pins in Finchley Park. So the Coach and Horses has featured on a couple of podcasts, hasn't it? So we've got one of them in there as well. And I think they mentioned that the worst pint, I'd actually just move our pictures on the bottom there. The worst pint is the Toucan, apparently. I've not even heard the Toucan, somewhere in London. Yeah. But it claims to be a bit of an Irish bar. And it went on to say they're always banging about the best pint of Irish Guinness, and it's not. It's horrible. So there we go. So that was the perfect Guinness pint. And then the other one that Bruce sent me again was, I don't know if you saw this, I think some of the Red Tops did this, didn't they? The worst roast dinner. And unfortunately, it was on those Green King that we sometimes we're often a little bit kind of down on. So a Green King pub in Bristol were charging £11.79 for a roast dinner, and somebody had taken a picture of it, and it went viral as it always does. And I've got to say, it looks pretty minging, doesn't it? It's a big white plate with 2 roast potatoes, a huge, something looks like stuffing, 3 very manky bits of carrot, a bit of beef, and a bit of something else. A Yorkshire pudding that it's kind of half a Yorkshire pudding been kind of carved up. And then 2 bits of broccoli.
I've been to a Green King pub today, Pear Tree, and had the carvery, and it was far, 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 far superior to that. So I wouldn't necessarily blame Green King. I would blame whoever's in the kitchen.
It was branded depressive and not fit even for a dog. And that
was the said I've seen better in hospital.
The Channing Hotel in Bristol. So there we go. The turkey and beef duo. That was it. The turkey and beef. Oh, that's what that bit of white stuff is. It's a piece of turkey. So yes, interesting. So again, it's been quite quiet. Actually, beer-wise, it's been quite quiet. I know there's a lot of planning for festivals and various other bits and pieces. We mentioned that.
I've got beer news.
Go on then. Give us some beer news,
then,
Nick.
Popped up Molten today. Just needed to go and get some lawn fertilizer, all stuff. So parked in the marketplace. Driving out of the marketplace, Royal Oak was open, and Omni is open. The Yorkshire Bar and Tapas. So because I was in the car, I couldn't have a good look in. But as I drove past Omni, there were 3 hand pumps facing directly to the door. So as per my information, that possibly the guys at, guy and girl, Gemma and Ant at New Molten, I was told had taken Omni on. The indication of the 3 hand pumps could be a good indication of that. New Molten was still open, so I don't know whether they're running both together at the moment or what. But if I'd been walking, I hadn't been going anywhere else, and I would have probably popped into both and just seen how things are lying. But it's nice to see places reopening, and certainly to see those hand pumps on there. It'll be another addition on the map, Mike, next time you come up.
And I think
this podcast is called MalTravAle's, but we haven't actually done a pub crawl around Molten.
We need to do it. I think I've been following them on Facebook. They've been quite proactive in asking people what kind of things they want, and I think they've got at least one cask on And I think they're on about getting a few, they will put more in. So as they kind of reopen. So
I think they're gearing themselves towards mass market, younger crowd and stuff like that.
Stuff I think they're looking at. Yeah.
But there again, during the day, they've got a real ale on, I'll still go in there sort of thing.
So because for various reasons, because of kind of work and family commitments, it's not likely that we're probably going to get much kind of together and out with our normal beer trips until probably at least Easter. So we thought, well, what can we do for a couple of weeks? Because we pretty much caught up on all the trips that we've done and been on kind of end of last year and the start of this year. So I mentioned before that we used to be really good. Well, it's paused at the moment, and I know Simon often listens to this. So I did say we'd play due deference to the Chronicles of Beer, which has got a bit of a York theme as well, because Adam, the guy who kind of leads that, is York based, and they've been doing kind of an A to Z of beers. So I kind of pulled in that slightly. I thought, well, we could do an A to Z of kind of pub crawls and the things that would come to mind when we kind of think about great pubs, great beer. So that's the plan. So I don't know whether we'll go all the way through the alphabet in the next few weeks, but we'll give it a good go. Then we can always pause it when we do get to meet up again. And certainly probably Easter, I'll be probably trying to get up to Yorkshire, so we might try and organise something there as well. So we said we'd keep it simple this week and just do ABC to kind of kick it off. So we've each gone away and had a thought about if, something to do with pubs, something to do with visiting places. And it's been quite interesting actually what we all come up with. A bit of history, a couple of actual pubs that are going to come up, a couple of breweries that are going to come up. So yeah, it's interesting really how we've all slightly gone for slightly different things. So we'll kick off. We'll start off with A. And I'm going to kick off because I've kind of been doing my history bit on me kind of pub stuff. So, I found this very weird bloke on YouTube who sings songs about letters. So here's that. I think there's an A.
They go on about him on Radio 5 Live. He sings people's names as well, doesn't he?
Yeah. So I think it's a bit like same at kids. So I thought we'd kick off and kind of kick it all off. So again, for those on YouTube, I've got a picture here of. Well, she's an alewife. And now, gentlemen, can you explain what's going on here? Your history.
When the gentleman went out to work, because the water wasn't fit to drink, there was only beer to drink. So the gentleman in the house would go out to work, and in order to get a bit of extra income, the alewife would brew the beer. So the people get it on the way to work, at lunchtime on the way home, so they were drinking cholera-infested dirt. So it was the original cottage industry, really, wasn't it?
It was, yeah, very much, and very female-based as well until the industrialization of all things. So anything else in the picture that we could maybe comment on for those?
Yeah, she looks like one of them chav wives who basically never gets out of her sleepwear, wanders to shops in her pajamas. Looks like she's wearing a nightie, is she?
And what's hanging outside her house?
Flying by the looks of it.
Yeah. So that's the broomstick. So by all accounts, this began, I think, with the Romans when we've talked about this one. I think we talked about pub signs many years ago, that the Romans began to put signs outside of inns and taverns to let people know what was in there. And also part of that, I think you mentioned, Nick, it was kind of some taxing as well, so that it was good quality, and also that the revenue men knew where to call.
Yeah.
So by all accounts, the first, if you like, English pub signs were actually brooms. So when the alewife was brewing or she had her beer ready, she would put a broom, and like Bruce said, it is like a witch's broomstick, or these days that's what you call it, a bloody Harry Potter broomstick. And it's interesting actually because I did a bit more research about this, and yeah, the alewives are very much connected to kind of maybe the stories of witches as well. So again, for those on YouTube, there's a picture here that I've got off some history channel place of an alewife, and she's got a black cat, she's got a pointy black hat, she's got the broomstick. Obviously the cats were to keep the rats down from eating all the malt, which obviously was being brewed up. So this was ale, which was mainly made out of malt, of course no hops at this time. And apparently the pointy hat became part of the kind of tradition that the best alewives had the biggest pointy black hats. And so this is kind of all where it is. So you can start to see the kind of connection with witches, because again, apparently a lot of the pictures you see of people being dunked in the local pond are not actually witches, they're alewives who have sold bad ale or have undersold. So they've, we've mentioned again the tankards that people had and the kind of crap they used to pour into the beer to kind of make it go longer and therefore make more money.
Oh, so men have got shit faced, and then following day not turned up to work, and blamed the
alewife.
To
Yeah.
the squire. Sorry, Squire.
Common criminal offence in York, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Sorry, Squire. I couldn't come to work because of the alewife.
Yeah. But again, as with all things, as the agricultural revolution initially kind of kicked in and Enclosure Act, which moved people over, kind of started to move people towards places like York, then the alewife slightly began to kind of drop off, and obviously ale houses took over and beer houses. And again, we've mentioned before about how many of those there were in York, and so that gives obviously our ale house, and obviously that is the kind of the forerunner of the English pub. Again, we could go on and talk about inns and taverns, and they've all got slightly different kind of historical links. But the ale house is still very much kind of either colloquially where you kind of go to the pub. And again, I was just reflecting, we've got some good ale houses that we visited. So my two in Stoke-on-Trent are the London Road Ale House. I think Nick, you've been in there with me, and the Bridge Street Ale House, which is one in Newcastle, which actually is just across the road from the Hot Water, so where I tend to go. We've mentioned Fanny's Ale House in Saltaire, which used to be one of the few places you could buy a beer in Saltaire.
The early place, yeah.
The good old days.
Yeah.
And I remember I can still remember we had a cracking day after Boxing Day in there, after being stuck on trains in the very snowy West Yorkshire, and it was lovely in there. And then Foley's Ale House, again, we've mentioned that because I think that was one of my choices for Leeds, but this was it was York Brewery, wasn't it, that had it for a while, but I understand I don't know. I tried to check today. I think it might still be closed.
No, I
should be a bit of Mecca, didn't it?
Because obviously Leeds sold all their pubs out, so it's Thixton's now, isn't it? Or
Black
Sheep.
Sheep. It was York, then it was Black Sheep, but it shut during COVID, and the Facebook site says it's still shut at the moment.
And Mr. Foley was the head of I think there was a solicitors or an insurance that occupied that building.
Yeah, that's
and
he
was the head director of the business. So
it's quite a unique place, wasn't it?
Mr. Foley's Ale House.
I think we talked in our Leeds episode. We talked about
it. Was one of those new converted, well, not new building, but a traditional, very interesting, unique building converted to a real ale bar. Yeah. It was one of the first in Leeds. So we used to go to the traditional pubs in Leeds, but for something a bit different, you went in there, didn't you?
Yeah. And again, just while we're on that, again, if anybody, the Pellicle, which is kind of one of the kind of trade magazines, craft magazines, they've actually just done a whole, a number of articles, but then a podcast on Leeds, and really interesting to listen to that about the growth of kind of beer in Leeds, the North Bar, one of the first ever craft bars in the whole of the UK, and then Northern Monk, and some of the other obviously breweries. Because when you said, Leeds used to be the city of pubs and Manchester used to be the city of breweries, and now it's slightly swapped like in that there's lots of really good breweries in Leeds now, aren't there? Cracking breweries like I'm thinking of. So you've got Leeds Brewery, you've got Northern Monk, you've got North Brewing, what's the one? Kirkstall Abbey. And obviously the Ilkley and places like that, we like that as well. So that was my choice about a little bit kind of why we love pubs, and I think Foley's a good example of those kind of interesting places that we go to. Nick, you kind of continue the theme because your choice was ale, as in cream ale, blonde ale, winter ale, brown ale.
Well, I mean, ale is an umbrella name, isn't it? If you talk about ale, then people really know that you're talking about real beer. That said, obviously there are various brews now purporting to be ale, and they're somewhat removed from real beer. But yeah, whether it's brown, whether it's cream, which is obviously a popular style in America, whether it's amber, whether it's India Pale Ale, except often it's called IPA, and IPA was behind the revolution. Positives with IPA turned quite a few people from drinking lager to drinking beer when they saw this light, fairly fizzy beer at the bar, and when they're asking the person behind the bar, what they can recommend, and well, it's like a lager with some taste to it. And I always remember one of the pubs I went in, and one of those geezers who would normally be seen with a pint of Stella asked the bloke behind the bar for a pint of that IPA, please. Can I have a pint of IPA, mate? What? The IPA? What do you mean? The IPA beer, mate. The IPA. All right, yeah, India Pale Ale. So he obviously didn't know IPA stood for India Pale Ale. But it's a revolution. But obviously it's referred to as ale, going back to the old descriptions of beer, and we know the history of the IPA.
I was watching TV last night, actually. There was a comedian on. He was saying he'd been out for a meal in a restaurant, and the man next door to him asked for a portion of Man Get Out. We say, Man Get Out. But they said, look, Man Get Out. Of course, Monge too, yeah.
So we've got a picture for those on YouTube again. Those on YouTube. So we got pictures. I've got some winter ale on here. Got some brown ale. We've talked about Newcastle brown ale again. Sadly, another sad reflection of its former glory. And Boddington's, which might come up in a short while as well, which used to be a cream ale. Actually, Boddington's used to be classed as a cream ale. And of course, we mentioned pale ale there.
On that can there, it says pub ale.
I know, pub ale. I don't know. I just Googled it and I put in cream ale and Boddington's pub ale came up. And obviously we mentioned that Tadcaster, one of the reasons why they became such a brewing centre was the sharp water, that water with all the limestone and gypsum in it, was great at making pale ales. And pale ales, again, Nick mentioned revolution, but there was a revolution first in the kind of 1800s when the expanding, cotton mills and wool mills needed thirst quenching beers, and porters and strong beers, which were the stouts, which were the normal, move way to pale ale and obviously miles as well. And we won't get started on miles because that's another one. So Bruce, now your A stands for Ayton, and again it's part of your beery highlights, isn't it? That you reported back yesterday. Yeah, I
was struggling for an A, and then lo and behold, yesterday morning I found myself in Great Ayton, to the south east of Middlesbrough, on the edge of the North Yorkshire Moors, in the shadow of Rosebery Topping. Can't believe I'm 55. I've never been before. Have you two been before?
Yeah, we used to play football there, didn't we? At school, we used to play because there's a very small independent school there that
it's a posh kids, bless them.
Yeah, which I think, and on the picture there's a picture of James Cook as a young boy, because obviously James Cook is and I think he went to that school, which is why the school's got a slight fame. That I think it's a school that he went to school in. So this is kind of on the edge, isn't it? It's on the edge of North Yorkshire. I guess County Durham is
the very bottom of the moors.
It is in North Yorkshire.
It's just in North Yorkshire, isn't it? It's on the border.
Well in North Yorkshire.
And is it County Durham that's over the border then? Well, Teesside, is it County
Durham? Teesside. Cleveland stroke Teesside, if Cleveland exists anymore.
But I've said what a splendid place it was. I've been really excited to go there because he was at scout selection thing. So me and friend went up and done a bit of research. And what a great stop it is. It felt to me as though you're almost in a village in the Cotswolds, but in North Yorkshire. Incredibly wealthy village, but everybody very, very friendly, I have to say. And we got there in time, dropped TV off at Cartland in Cleveland, drove to Great Inn. And I've been doing a bit of research. We went to the Royal Oak Hotel to start with, which was quite nice, beamed room, quite atmospheric, very welcoming. Had a bit of research and they did a full Yorkshire breakfast for £8.75. We sat there, had a fantastic breakfast, all sorts from Petch's Butchers next door, which is the reason most people go there. And when it came to the bill, it was tiny. And I said, you missed a breakfast off. He goes, no, it's Saturday morning. It's buy one, get one free. Insane. I know, fantastic it was.
Did you have a pint with it, Bruce?
No, I didn't actually. I had to drink later on. So then we potted next door to try Petch's Pies. I've been here about Petch's Pies for years. When we taught a pie shop bucket list. And I have to say, people travel miles for those pies. And you literally walked about the village afterwards. By this time, it was 11:30. And there were people who just rocked up to Great Inn and they were leaving that butcher's with not bags, they were leaving that with boxes of pies. Everywhere, the people getting shipping orders full of pies. Very good pies, I have to say, but a very slightly different style to our Yorkshire pies. We have that coarse grind. These were more very fine grind, very sort of soft mince.
We're talking pork.
Yeah, they were very good, I have to say. Right. But a different style, but
not meat and turkey.
Yes, and then as I say, by this time the place, this bizarre large village, is filling up with people. The car park's full of people, are parking wherever they can, and we had mooch about. And they've got two micro pubs as well as the Book in the other pub. Sadly, the quarry stores are up so far, but it looked great. I mean, you can't believe this is a village. There's everything there. There's there's pubs, there's bakers, there's butchers, there's pie shops, but also it's famous for Suggett's, which is the sweetest shop and ice cream parlour that belongs to the farms across the road. I should have taken a picture inside, actually. Astonishing place, this. Go inside, it's like going back 50 years. Not being altered, it's just been preserved. Amazing range of sweeties, and you get like a wonderful 99 made with ice cream from Milk Cross Road for like £1.20. And I have to say, I was talking to a lady, very friendly she was, and I said, this is amazing, I can't believe I've been here before, it's wonderful. Don't be telling everybody, she says, we like it the way it is. That looks funny. I'm on a podcast.
It's all right, Bruce. We're not telling many people then.
It is. It's not on the A19. It's not on the A1. It's kind of in between the two, isn't it? So it's in a bit of a hinterland. If people have ever walked Rosebery Topping, which is kind of again on that again for those on YouTube, the kind of the logo for Great Ayton has got Rosebery Top in the background, which is a very well, it's not famous. It's kind of a very well-known landmark at that end of North Yorkshire, and it looks like a bit of a kind of a distinct volcano. And it's a thing up. And again, Watts pub there, the King's Head. It mentions the Tannery, which I guess is one of those brew pubs you were about, Micro, Royal Oak, and the Buck. And like you said, there's also the Quarry Stone as well. So for a little village,
is the King's Head actually in Great Ayton, or is that the one in
I think that's just outside, isn't it? Yeah,
because that's part of the Ink collection. So we've been there, Mike. We've had some tweeting there. They're part of
Newton and Rosebery.
They're part of the pub chain that I've talked about. They're expanding massively all of the north of England, taking up prime positions in Lake District and places like that. So in Amble as well, that Amble Inn where we went when we were in Northumberland, that's one of the Ink collection. So yeah.
Very good stuff. So that's A's. So it's interesting A's. So let's move on to B's. Now again, Bruce, interesting with your first choice here. So you've gone for what? You've gone for a beer / a brewery. So here's Bob again with his B's. So the first B is Boddington, and there's a very splendid picture of the old Boddington's Brewery, which I understand now is part of Manchester College now.
No, I'm sad.
So obviously Boddington's has gone completely, hasn't it? I don't think anybody brews it anymore.
No, only in America, I believe it. But it's fun. I didn't realise it was now part of the Manchester College because amazingly, I mean, Boddington's was born out of Manchester Grammar School. Yeah. Of course, in the 1300s, Manchester Grammar School literally had the monopoly on grain and brewing in Manchester. There was huge demand there with the workforce. And of course, they had a workforce of schoolboys who used to get to work free of charge. And I believe also...
no, hang on, Bruce. Wasn't the brewery set up because the grammar school had the control of the grain and stuff?
It was.
It was some entrepreneurs that said we're not going to be beholden to them, so they established the brewery just outside of the control that the grammar school or the university had.
That's right. There were a couple of people who decided that because of the monopoly they had, they'd set up their own Strangeways brewery, so it became Boddington's. But eventually, there was a fellow called John Boddington. And Henry Boddington, rather, his brother Henry, John started it. And Henry sort of grew the business. He was a salesman and turned it this classic monolithic brand, which he was. And of course, for us, it became ubiquitous for those Melanie Sykes stands, didn't it? I have to say, we've got to talk all day about this. But if you go and see, put Manchester's Finest, the rise and fall of Boddington into your search engine, there's a cracking article in Manchester's Finest. It's a really good read. I think I sent it to you, Michael, didn't I? If you have a look at it in terms of everything it went through, Boddington's, I mean, it was raced the ground in the Blitz. It was bought by Whitbread, who sort of, at one point started to look after it, and of course it went through the hands of all these corporations till eventually it all disappeared. It's a cracking read. So whilst I say now, sadly, it only seems to exist. We talked about John Smith's the other week, actually, which made me look, and I have seen John Smith's move on supermarket shelves, but I can never see any Boddingtons.
Yeah, I've seen Boddingtons in cans, yeah.
The only time I've seen it was on the cruise ship drinks menu, yeah.
I'm just reading it now. It says that instantly it was one of the first beers that had a widget, because obviously the creaminess. So they were one of the first cans in the world that had to put the widget in. So again, it's a similar story, isn't it? In 1989, Boddington's Brewery was bought out by Whitbread.
Yeah.
And they did continue with market and national distribution. Boddington achieved its peak market share in 1997 when it was being exported to over 40 countries. Boddington's beer brands are now owned by Anisha Bush InBev, which acquired the Whitbread Brewery Company in 2000. In 2000, Strangeways Brewery was closed in 2004. The production of pasteurised keg and can Boddingtons was moved to Smelesbury in Lancashire. We mentioned them before because that's where they do Tetleys now, isn't it? And there was something else that gets brewed up there. And cask conditioned beer was moved to Hyde's Brewery in Moss Side. So it stayed in Manchester, the cask, but was discontinued in 2012. So reading this, it basically says that Boddington's now is extinct. They might imbrew. It was in 2010. It was still the sixth highest selling beer in the UK.
Must have been canned up.
Yeah, it looks like.
I'm sure I've seen it in cans in the supermarket.
Yeah.
like Stones. We've talked about Stones before.
Just said it was discontinued. Well, the cast was discontinued in 2012, so maybe one to look out for. But
a brand like that could be just thrown away in the interest of, because the volume of profit. It's absolutely shocking.
And again, going back, if we go back, it was a cracking pint. It was pulled tight. It was a hoppy bitter, typical northern bitter, pulled really tight in a northern pub. And it was a cracking beer, and people often say that. I think maybe it got a bit like Doom Bar, I guess. It got very ubiquitous, didn't it? It was everywhere. And if you ever bought any cans, if you went to a barbecue, you took 4 cans of, bodies with you. But it was a cracking pint in cask. It was a wonderful pint.
I'd like to see Doom Bar become extinct, yes.
yeah. Good stuff. Right. So my B is a pub. A tap house. Ooh. So my B is, which somewhere I quite like going. I think it's growing on Nick, mainly because he texts me and he's got the loyalty card, so he's probably got another free pint due as well, which is the Brass Castle Tap House. So actually, I keep seeing Brass Castle are getting about quite a bit. Actually, a couple of places that have had them in the bar this week. Are we doing it? Oh, you've only got 2 on that one. So we need to revisit. So Brass Castle, obviously set up in Molten again, probably about 8 or 9 years ago now. They kind of, if you like, revisited brewing once the Molten Brewery company had kind of fallen down a little bit and went a bit of a beer desert again. That these guys came along, began brewing behind where the tap house is, in I think what was a lawnmower shed, wasn't it? A lawnmower business.
It was a suitcase shop for years.
And then the suitcase shop was in the front here. And if you remember back in an episode where we did talk about Molten, I found this was actually a temperance hotel. Back in the day.
Right.
The actual building was actually a temperance hotel. So they've now got a fairly small tap. It's fairly basic. It's 1 room, toilets out the back. There's a nice little courtyard now, which connects the kind of tap room to the brewery. And again, if you remember me, Nick, and Finn, my son, we sat in the sun at the Molten Food Festival and a few nice beers in the courtyard there. To be honest with you, I like it best because it's one place where you can get cask of Bad Seed Brewery, which is another one of Molten's breweries now as well. To be quite honest, I probably prefer Bad Seed, sort of their take on pales and IPAs to Brass Castle's. Brass Castle's standout is for me is Bad Kitty, which is their kind of stout, which is pretty good, pretty nice, pretty quaffable. So I quite like the tap house. It's a bit rough and ready. There's a big table on the right as you go in, which is where the most regulars tend to kind of haunt. So me and you, Nick, I've got a picture of us both. We're sat in the window. Those window seats are lovely to kind of watch the world go by. And then there are seats at the side. There's a couple of kind of old kind of pinball type machine game things, aren't they? And is there an old kind of Space Invaders in there as well?
No, they had an old one-arm bandit, but I think they sold it on now.
Right, okay. And then the canning machine's gone as well, I think, because these have a canning machine.
The growler. No, I think that's still by the bar.
Right.
They've got a growler where, you pull it into the can and then put the can lid on for you.
Right.
Their own.
And again, it's got slightly limited opening hours, and again, we discussed that before. So you've got to be a little bit careful if you want to call in. Dead handy for both the station and the bus station in Molten, because it's literally a 2-minute walk. And again, if you're stuck in a traffic jam, you'll go past Brass Castle because it's on the kind of famous Butcher's Corner, which understanding has been chaos, hasn't it, for the last couple of weeks from Molten Moan, with roadworks and whatever else, and the roundabout being closed. So I always quite enjoy popping in here when I'm back in the mother town. And I say often because they not only do they sell their own beers, but there's also a couple of guests on. And I said they regularly have Bad Seed beers on as well as the Brass Castle ones as well. So, and as we said there, they do a loyalty card. So I think, is it 8 pints and you get 1 free, Nick, or 6 pints and you get 1 free, something like
that? Yeah. That's a play on my wallet again.
Yeah, no worries. So that was my B. So that just leaves, Nick, your B, which you've already gone and give us a little bit of a theme because you waved your glass at us, didn't you? So you've chosen Bass for your B.
It has to be. B's for Bass. It was the beer that put British brewing on the world map, wasn't it? And also the other distinction of being the first registered trademark. That poor employee, although it's still not been absolutely proved that the story is correct, but supposedly the little employee was sent out on New Year's Eve to sit in line in 1876, I think it was, to be the first one at the registrations office to register the red triangle as registration mark #1 in Britain. And I think #2 Bass got with their blue triangle as well. And the red triangle was a symbol of a quality beer that was then reproduced by others, copied by others, and appeared in various different famous artworks by well-known painters of that time, the late 18th, 19th century. And as I say, Bass, where they were based in Burton there, they basically sent beer out all around the world and made, I suppose, brewing into they were like Super League, weren't they? In that, the whole town of Burton was laid out specific to the breweries with the railways and everything, and how they were able to produce the product and get it out there. So yeah, Bass is my B.
And yeah, and like you say, it became, if you like, the way that you brewed beer in, certainly from the kind of 1800s onwards, wasn't it? And we talked before about the union system that they kind of established, the water, which again, people all over the world Burtonize their water to create beers now in the style of Burton. And again, Nick, of course, it was IPA that made them famous. It was their IPA, like you said, going around the world. And then often, sometimes overlooked, though, also the Baltic Porter as well, the even stronger beers that went off to Russia. And although we probably shouldn't mention them at the moment, should we?
Imperial stouts and stuff.
And I think if we're talking about pub crawls and pubs, that Bass triangle and that Bass logo is, again, probably one of the most well-known ones, even pubs that don't have Bass, because that's getting a little bit of a... that's right. That's where... Sorry, we talked about Smallsbury in Lancashire. That's where they brew Bass now as well. So as well as brewing Boddingtons, that's where the only place they brew Bass these days, up in Lancashire, because it's not brewed in Burton anymore. And again, back in the day, it was a cracking pint. Often, it was one of those beers actually that you could get away with it just being served straight from the barrel. And I mentioned before a couple of pubs that I used to go to that it was served in jugs, although it feels like an anathema to say that, it tasted blooming good. It didn't go particularly far.
I know they owned that certain style, didn't they? Often there would be a really quite plush snug room, like button leather seats. It was like quite plush, quite twee, and they'd have a really utilitarian sort of bar, wouldn't you, for the proper drinkers? Well, that was the big distinction of the pubs, wasn't there?
And that their logo works so well in Red Neon as well. You remember the pub, when you come over the M62, and they used to have that big neon Bass sign on the end of the pub.
Yeah.
And I still like to know what happened to it, because the pub, I understand it was bought by 2 or 3 brothers, and they called it like the Three Brothers Pub, but they did the typical, I think, ripped it all out and did it all like shaker style with the wooden floors and that grey colour that they seem to be painting all these craft bars now. And when the sign disappeared, I mean, it might have been even a bit big for my collection, that, because, I mean, you could see it from the M62 up on the hill there. It was just that classic sign on all weathers, M62s are known for, like, when the weather's poor, but you could see that Bass sign shining out there, and it worked so well with the red neon lights. So,
yeah, do you think that? I mean, the range of beers that was quite limited, was it? I mean, I'm looking now. I mean, basically, they did Bass, draft Bass bitter, which was 4.4. They did Bass Ale, which was a little bit, that was the exported version that you got in bottles. It was 5%. They did Bass Extra Smooth, which was the keg version, Bass Mild, Quadruple X, and Bass Best Scotch, which I guess was the Scotland trade. But that was it. They didn't really do many styles.
That's what every brewery did 20, 30, 40 years ago. This is one of my criticisms of the modern breweries. Instead of concentrating and stuff and getting somewhat consistent, they think they have to pop a different flavour out every week.
Yeah, but that was all. And then, of course, famously, Shandy Bass, which apparently was actually brewed by Britvic, but it was real Bass. 0.5% ABV Shandy. Bass beer and lemonade. That was cracking, when we 12, 13, it was cracking having a Bass Shandy. Shandy Bass, very nice.
You don't see that anymore, do you?
No.
That was in 500 milliliter cans, wasn't it?
Discontinued in 2018, apparently.
Yeah.
There we go.
Any other soft drink you got was all 330 milliliters, your Lilt and your Fanny and your all that sort of stuff. But yeah, you went for your Shandy Bass, and they had a lager one as well, didn't they? They had a Pilsner Shandy.
Yeah.
So no, I remember that, Mike. Friday night when we had to get our own tea when Mum and Dad started going out. It used to be make your own tea, and treat was a can of Shandy Bass.
And Bruce mentioned Scouts out that side, so I've come back from Scouts. Yeah, Scouts on Friday night or Thursday night, and I remember coming back in after chatting around for an hour and a half, and like I say, one of those big 440 cans of Shandy Bass was lovely, very nice. Often like with fish and chips as well. All the chippies sold it as well. I suppose it's good to have a chips. Yeah. Again, I mean, Bruce Minu did a pilgrimage to the Bass in just about the kind of God, I don't think we had kids, or if we had, Harriet was very, very young, so it must be 20 odd years ago. And it was, that was probably just when Bass was starting to, I guess, disappear, because we went around the big brewery and that was all very much cans and lagers. And obviously the museum was still the Bass Museum then. It's now the National Brewing Museum, but it was still very much Bass. And I think we had some cracking beer, didn't we, in the little tap room that they had there. And
I tell you what, it was pre-mobile phones, because I remember you two phoning me up from a telephone box to phone your missus to come and pick you up, because there was no more buses or trains or something. Right. You were both out blathered. And I say, I had to then phone your wife up and say, Phil, you've got to go to Burton and pick Michael and Bruce up, because they're in the telephone box. There's no way they can get home. So it was pre-mobile phones, put it that way.
Yeah, that probably was. So yeah. Unfortunately, it's a little bit. It's not quite, but it's not quite the. Although I didn't know they've had a beer week on this last week or so as well, and there is some obviously there's the Burton Bridge Brewery and one or two other new breweries that have set up in Burton. And obviously, brewing still dominates the town. Marston's is still hanging on there, and that still is very much the old-fashioned brewery. So again, just reading here, UK Bass. InBev brought them out in 2005. They actually gave the brewing to Marston's, and they were brewing it for a while, but now it's brewed up in Lancashire again, and it's also brewed in the US and in Belgium as well. So there we go. So that was our B. So again, two breweries and a tap room. So let's move on to C's. Here's Bob again with our number C. And I'm going to kick us off. So I guess linked in a way. So I've chosen Cameron's mainly as a kind of really just a C to kind of get us going. And probably more importantly for us would be kind of Cameron's Strong Arm, because again, certainly when I first started drinking, that was one of the brews of choice. It was probably one of the most, alongside probably Tetley's in Molten. Most either every other pub, they didn't sell Tetley's. They sold Cameron's Strong Arm, which was a ruby red ale, which again was quite unique, wasn't it? I think for maybe our neck of the woods, really. I'm always surprised when I see it was only 4%, because you always felt like it was stronger than that. It was slightly stronger, but
I think Cameron's on the normal bitter at about 3.7, 3.8.
Yeah, so it was a little bit stronger, maybe.
I had a half yesterday in the Spread Eagle pub in Stokesley. Spread Eagle's not a great pub, I have to say, Master's pub. They had Strong Arm on the bar, so I had a half for old time's sake. £4.40 a pint. But it's pretty distinct. I mean, we live in an age now where beers are getting quite bubbling into one, but it still has that distinct colour, very distinct taste. Half was enough, though, yeah.
I think it's permanently on the bar in the New Globe Molten. I think it's permanently on there.
Yeah. I mean, again, it was, it probably doesn't quite taste what it used to taste like. And I'm guessing again with the iconic, the guy on the pump clip, it was very much for the steel workers in Middlesbrough. Cameron's out. Well, they are now the biggest brewery in the northeast. It's really near. They've still got 71 tied pubs, and it's the oldest industrial concern in Hartlepool, where the brewery is still based. Although, again, I think they're actually bought out by Wolverhampton and Dudley are now, I think, they're actually owned by Heineken. If you follow it all up, they're actually a Heineken UK conglomerate. The link to Molten, of course, is they bought out Russell's and Wrangham's in the, I've just got it written it down somewhere, which was the brewery that was in Molten. You've got a couple of Russell and Wrangham's.
The breweries.
You both have, haven't you? You've both got a tin from them. And of course, that again, so although they didn't do any brewing in Molten, they had quite a large distribution warehouse up in, almost in the centre of Molten, didn't they, on Castlegate.
Didn't they brew in it?
Kids. No, they didn't brew anything in Molten. It was more of a distribution. It was kind of
because I remember our next door neighbour,
it and stuff.
It was like old days. They used to get part of the pay in beer, and he used to bring a bucket of beer home with him. 8 pints of beer.
It came in tanks. I think it came in. What was really, it came in tanks,
right?
And then they kind of put it in barrels or the bottles or everything else there as well. So again, that was very much part of our heritage. That if you were going into Molten from where we live, you passed Cameron's on the, you couldn't really go past it really. So I think just for if you like old time sakes, again they had quite a lot of tied houses. So again, quite a few of the pubs that we would frequent in the good old days were Cameron's houses, and more recently, of course, they took control of the Leeds Brewery pubs. They're all being run by Cameron's, and of course the Head of Steam bars that we talked about, and in particular, I know you guys love the Sheffield Head of Steam, and there's one in Leeds as well, isn't there?
They're expanding. Certainly, that's where they were trying to go 2 years ago. They were actually asking people to recommend sites for them around the country. They basically put a list up and said, "Look, this is where we want to create Heads of Steam. So if you know of anywhere that's suitable, let us know." A bit like Tim Martin does at Wetherspoons.
Yeah, and of course they're still brewing out of their Lion Brewery, which again still has 12 Yorkshire Squares, which again we mentioned in quite a few breweries. Obviously, Sam Smiths have those as well. I was just trying to find a bit about Molten again because I saw it and I've lost it again. There we go. In 1961, Russell's and Wrangell Molten was acquired with 90 licensed public houses. So they're the ones that probably we knew that would have been taken over and worked it through. So Cameron to me is a little bit of a nostalgia. I think, if I'm in a pub and I see Strong Arm, I probably would have a pint of it just for old time's sake. And as Nick's mentioned there, the Globe in Molten was one of our regulars brews, wasn't it, when we first came of it? Well, in fact, before we came of age, because we were allowed to sit in the back room
Guinness, yes,
and drink along with drink bottles. The landlord was very happy.
Barry
and Sue.
Barry and Sue. They were the ubiquitous landlord and landlady. There was always one of them behind the bar. Yeah. They were the typical, quite portly but always jolly. And they were the absolute classic land, just the sort of people you want running a pub, and that's why they were there so long, and that's why they built up such a clientele. That was the pub to go into. Now it's changed its colours a little bit. It's more the lively pub in town now. I'm not saying don't go in there, but discos, karaoke's, people falling around after a bit too much beer. Don't read the reviews.
Go in at lunchtime when it's actually quiet, and the old boys are in there and have a nice pint. So the next two, now entering your other seat, you both chose pubs, and ones again we've mentioned fairly recently on podcasts. So this is a slightly blurred picture, Bruce, but this is, I know, one of your pubs of all time with some very interesting stained glass windows, isn't it?
It's got two stages. The Crown Passado
up in the Toon. So the outside bit.
Probably undoubtedly one of the 10 best pubs in the country. Legend has it was bought by a visiting Spanish sea captain, who was a regular caller at the dock, and he bought it for his Geordie mistress to give us some gainful employment, and obviously a place for him to go and take all his friends. It's absolutely totally unspoiled inside. So it's got those two stained glass windows, fantastic wood panelling, leather seating. It's actually run by John Scott Fitzgerald Group now. They own, I think, about a dozen pubs around Newcastle, possibly more, but they do preserve them all incredibly well. Also has a really large selection of ale ales on, big supports of local breweries. But the place, it's like drinking in a museum, and they're friendly too. If you're in Newcastle, it's probably it's the one pub not to miss when Newcastle is, it's fair to say, isn't it?
But you could walk past it, Bruce, without realising
it's a very small entrance.
It's almost like one of those little Irish pubs. It's just like one long, narrow room, isn't it? And because of that, it's obviously got a very narrow frontage as well. And it doesn't scream at you as being a pub. I suppose it's because it's not got Sky Sport banners all on the outside of it, and 3 bottles of Kronenberg for a tenner or something like that. But no, you could walk past it. And like you say, it's one of those buildings that, from when Newcastle was a massive port. So you can understand its heritage and its background.
It's got almost kind of like Gin Palace inside, hasn't it? It's like, as we mentioned before, like
those long, narrow.
Yeah. I'm actually reading, Bruce. Actually, it's been bought again because I'm reading here. There's an article in the Chronicle in Newcastle. The Ladhar Group, LADHAR, acquired the pub from St. John Fitzgerald during lockdown. There was always a knowledge of taking on something very special. So John Fitzgerald had developed a great name in the trade, and we were conscious respecting the heritage and integrity of the business. The North East Leisure Company, Ladhar Group, now I've also took on 16 other pubs across the North East. But the Crown is definitely the crown jewel. So yeah, really, really interesting. And again, apparently they have been looking at preserving all those stained glass, and also, of course, the ceiling, which is quite ornate, isn't it, as well? Which I guess
Oh,
needs
it's
quite a lot of
fantastic.
looking after, really.
It is.
Yeah.
And if you should have fans in Newcastle on a Friday and Saturday night, we were recently, it also becomes something of a refuge from the madness going on the streets outside.
Now, he also said it's renowned for the gramophone that's on the bar.
Yes, it's also a gramophone playing old records on constantly. It's been there. I mean, I've been going for over 30 years. I've never turned off. And apparently, it's still the original gramophone. They have some special needles for them.
And the Chronicle also says, Bruce, that it's also very well known for its ham and peas pudding, stotties, homemade pies, and sausage rolls. So there's another reason why Bruce likes it in there.
The stotties, they're massive. I have to say, last time we were there, they'd not got back to doing them yet, but they were imminently due, I believe. Yeah, due back on imminently. They are huge. The peas pudding is 10 acquired, shall we say. I think cold, squashed, compressed, mushy peas.
Mixed with lard.
Yes.
So that's the crowd passada. So again, that was mentioned very, very frequently in our Northeast pubs crawl back in episode like 18, 19. And Bruce, you mentioned it a couple weeks ago when you went up and you did a couple of tours around the Toon. So again, for anybody visiting the Newcastle on Tyne, then the Crown Passada. And then Nick, again, you've mentioned this fairly recently, actually, and again, it was mentioned in both of our London pods, I think. And you've chosen again another pub with a very interesting and heritage interior, which is the Chandos.
Chandos, home from home. Obviously, last time I went down to London, I was looking for a couple of pubs. Didn't quite get my timings right, but the nice thing with the Chandos is everybody knows how to get to Trafalgar Square. Trafalgar Square is like the massive landmark in London. So even if you do get lost in London, you inevitably always end up getting yourself to Trafalgar Square. So from Trafalgar Square, if you head to the top left-hand corner of Trafalgar Square, northeast, the Chandos is just there. And once again, typical of Sam Smith's pub, because he doesn't put a lot of advertising outside, you can walk past it and not realise it's a pub as such. Typically inside of a Sam Smith's pub, very, very traditional, very well done. You've got those little booths as well. So even, what night was it? Was it a Friday or a Saturday night? Managed to get in there, managed to get myself in one of those little booths all on my own, just tucked away. You can hear everything that's going on, everybody's conversations, because of course there's no music, there's no jukeboxes, and no TVs. So you're sat in there in your little booth and you can listen to the conversations either side of you. People are unaware that listening to their conversations, if you're on your own, or you can take a book in. I picked up a couple of London drinkers as well. So quite happy, sat on my own, middle of London, having a beer, having a old brewery. I think I told you the last time I'd been in there, Bruce, not the last time, but the time before that was down at Christmas, and they had Old Stingo on tap on the bar. Now, if anybody knows Sam Smith's beers, Old Stingo is the strong one. Old Stingo is the name for a beer that's quite infamous. There's been poems and songs
I've never seen it on tap,
yeah. And so I watched two Spanish people come in and order a pint of each of it, and one of them took a couple of sips, one of them tried his best, got about a third of the way down it, and they both left them, not because of the beer, because Stingo is about 8.5%, isn't it?
Yeah, it's strong.
Aussie barman behind the bar, I said, surprised to see that on tap, mate. He says, oh yeah, he says, I don't know how London will deal with the strength of this beer and people not realising what it is. But so if anybody's ever going to London and you want a bit of peace from the madding crowd and it gets too much and you think, where can I go for a quick drink? As I say, it's easy to find in terms of where it is, top left-hand side of Trafalgar Square. Also notice the memorial to Dame Edith Cavell as well. You'll see there's an obelisk memorial with a lady, and she was a nurse during World War One. She was the lady who was executed by the Germans for helping our guys who'd been injured, interned in the hospitals. She actually helped them escape and get back to friendly lines. And so the Germans realised what she was doing. She was arrested, she was interrogated and executed. So once again, she's just off to the left-hand side. People pile past her, not realising who she is, a true heroine, a true, very, very, very brave lady who gave her life for a cause. And so I always pay my respects to Edith Cavell as well when I'm in that part of London.
There's a really good write-up actually in What's Pub for this. In fact, you can't see it on this, but I didn't know this, Nick. Apparently, if you look up on that corner, there's actually a Cooper making barrels, kind of a stucco thing. Yeah, It's famous
so
as well.
I've never been upstairs, and then there's also a drinking area downstairs as well. But normally, if I'm going downstairs,
well,
it's not
again, just reading the WhatsApp. It was actually called the Bull's Head until 1885, and it was renamed the Chandos. I named the Chandos in 1891 when it was rebuilt. The upstairs room is called the Opera Room because it's named after the English National Opera, which is around the corner in the London Coliseum. It was actually a Masonic lodge back in the 1710. But again, as a pub, it was being used as a pub in the 1600s. The pub was enlarged in 1891 by its owner Edwin Porter, who was a very famous cyclist apparently. And again, it was actually hit by a bomb in the Second World War in 1940, December 29th, doing what was described as the greatest air raid ever in London. So a lot of what you see now is actually rebuilt after the Second World War. So very good. So that's the Chandos. So yeah, interesting. We've got some interesting ABC there. It works quite well, doesn't it? Some interesting bits there. Some reference back to podcasts that we've done before. So I think we've given you 3 pubs, 3 breweries, a little bit of history as well, and somewhere to visit as in Great Ayton. So very good. Now, what I'm going to suggest to do, I've got my little bag of Scrabble letters. So rather than just do kind of DEF, which is a bit boring, I'm going to put my hand in here and I'm going to pull out 3 random letters. I didn't have a Z, so I've not put Z in, so it won't be Z. And let's just pick the 3 random letters that we'll do in the
Zetland Hotel, Bruce.
The next one. So the first letter I'm pulling out is H. So that will be a letter that we do in the next podcast. Is the letter H. Anything come to mind? I'm
writing them down.
Home ales is what I used to drink in Loughborough. Yeah. That's one that comes to mind. Harrogate, of course. Yeah. We've done a pub crawl and went to Roosters. Hambleton Ales and Hambleton the place. Okay.
Harvey's Brewery down in Sussex. Delicious.
The next letter is V. V.
Oh, Christ.
So we've got obviously lots of victory ales we could maybe think about.
You like your Veltins, you, Bruce, but that's not really ale, is it?
No.
What's Valhalla? Have we got any Viking named pubs we can?
Bruce's favourite pub.
Yeah.
Bruce's favourite pub.
Very good.
So that's a difficult one, right? And I'll pick the last. And the last letter is going to be O. So we've got H, V, and O. So we can maybe think about Orange Boomer. Osset, yeah. Osset the place, Osset the brewery. There must be some other O's that we can think of. So that's the plan. So the next time that we meet, we're going to do the letters H, V, and O with all things beer crawly, pub crawly. So that'll be interesting. Very good. Right, gents, I'm off to London on Tuesday, so I might be able to sneak in maybe a useful tap. In fact, Bruce, you are probably not far. I've got to go. Where am I? I'm up King's Cross area somewhere. So I know, Bruce, you sent me again. I'll maybe share it next time. A really useful link that was pubs next to stations, wasn't it? In London, was quite useful.
Yes.
Weatherspoons at St Pancras, Mike.
That was on the write-up actually. It was very good. And there was if I let me find it because there were some interesting ones that 1 or 2 that I'd never thought of. Quite a few that are actually on. Literally on the station, because not only did it give you the
it was good for that,
it was kind of how quick you can get to the train on there as well.
Well, the thing is, if you go in the Wetherspoons, you get a cheaper pint at London Pride than you go in the parcel loft which is the fullest pub at King's Cross. Which it's it's a shame, but hey, one of those crazy situations that the brewery's selling it for more expensive than what you can get in spoons.
There we go. So open the link. So this was. It was in the Londonist. Was the so Blackfriars was the Blackfriar, Charing Cross was the Harp, which again we've mentioned in podcasts. Cannon Street was the Old Wine Shades. Not been to that one. Euston was Euston Tap, which is probably to be honest, I'll end up. Fenchurch Street was a Seething Lane Tap. King's Cross was a parcel yard for £6.20 pint of Fuller's. Liverpool Street is Hamilton Hall. London Bridge is the Georgie.
That's cracking, is that spot?
The Marylebone was the Globe, but not that one. The Moorgate was the Singer Tavern. Paddington is the Mad Bishop and the Bear. Looks quite interesting. That one. That's on the station.
That's a Fuller's pub. Yeah, that's a Fuller's pub.
State Pancras, they go for the Betchamin Arms, Nick. Which is actually
outside the station. Then
it's actually on the station, I think, by the looks of it. Actually on the station. Yeah, it says watch Eurostars come and go. That sounds like it's a The recently opened Barrel Vault, that's a Weatherspoons at the other end, is
That's
also very good
Barrel
as well.
Vault's the spoons,
But
yeah.
lacks style, it says.
Well,
Victoria
it's
says the market.
it reminds me of a airport Weatherspoons.
Yeah,
Quite open and lots of high tables, high stools, and
very
but
good.
good selection of beers.
Any plans, you gents? Have got any plans for this week?
Well, sorry, I'm working in Selby all week, so I will get to try
Giant Bellflower Bros.
And that's the spoons, isn't it? And I believe there's quite a good brew pub there, yeah.
Yeah, the dog pub, wasn't it? The Black Dog or something.
So we'll try those.
Yeah. Hey, get yourself on Bus to Google. Go and see the lads at the old
the Pudding Club.
Pudding Day.
Tom Pudding. Yeah.
Tom Pudding.
Very good. Right. So I will tweet out when we're going to do it. It may well be next weekend because we're on a bit of a roll now. So I hope you've enjoyed that one. And I say the next time we are going to be looking at the letters H, O, and V, just to kind of give us a little bit of a challenge. So, gents, have a good week, and we'll see you all shortly. See everybody. We'll play it with some more ukulele music, and we'll see you in the next episode.
See you.